the PK poll for 2026, my top 25. Let's start with number one. At number one, I have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Notre Dame is, I believe, if you were to drop Notre Dame in the SEC, I think Notre Dame would win the SEC. If you were to drop Notre Dame in the Big Ten, I might even have them win the Big Ten as well. I am infinitely high on Notre Dame this year. I believe not only is the roster super duper talented, but I've seen clips of them practicing and just hearing things out of fall camp. The chip, I wouldn't even call it a chip at this point. I'd call it a boulder on their shoulder after getting left out of the college football playoff last year. They're playing with that this year, and I think it's going to be scary for a lot of teams. Plus, you mix in the fact that they have a very manageable schedule. I think Notre Dame is pretty much a lock to make it to the college football playoff. But as you saw from my college football playoff predictions, I ended up having Notre Dame winning the whole thing. So I have Notre Dame at number one, but I couldn't go too far without putting Ohio State in there. I have Ohio State at number two for obvious reasons. I think we're all in agreement there. Ohio State was number one in the coaches poll. They were number one in the AP poll. So I have Ohio State at number two. At number three, another team from the Big Ten, I have Oregon. I've been doing a lot of research on Oregon. I've been doing a lot of, putting my ear to the ground, hearing what's coming out of fall camp in Eugene. Dante Moore back for his second year as the starter. That defensive line depth, seriously, they might have the deepest defensive line in college football. Certainly very comfortable, not just with the front seven, but with the defense as the whole. They have a really good secondary as well with Coy Parrish, a transfer from Minnesota at safety. He was the number one safety of the transfer portal. They got him to replace Dylan Thieneman. Brandon Finney at corner, who was a standout in the Orange Bowl last year versus Texas Tech as a true freshman. That defense is going to be great. I think they have a great 1-2 punch at running back. Love the receiver room. Love their interior on the offensive line. They do have to replace some pieces, but overall, I'm willing to trust it. I have Oregon at number three. I put out a short yesterday that I think it was criminal to have Indiana outside of the top five, and it is. So I have Indiana at number four. They're the defending national champions, although I don't know what they're defending. I mean, they are. They won the national championship in 2026. But with what Indiana was able to accomplish last year, it attracts talent. It attracts really highly rated recruits. And they had the number one transfer portal in the country come in over the spring. And who are we to doubt Kurt Signetti? Who are we to doubt little old Indiana after what they did last year? Do you want to try that? I personally don't. So I have Indiana at number four. At number five, the first SEC team that I have ranked, the Texas Longhorns. Now, I debated at this 4 through 5 spot because I have Indiana at 4, I have Texas at 5, and I have Georgia at 6. I know the SEC's been Georgia's conference. I know it has been. But there's something about the feel in Austin right now. This is the best roster that Steve Sarkisian's had in Austin. It feels like championship or bust for Texas. You just go position by position throughout this roster. And it is up there with the very best in the sport. What they were able to accumulate in the portal, obviously the way they develop players coming out of high school to get them to where they are now. You have Arch Manning returning for his second year at quarterback. Texas is a national championship contender, and they have one of the best rosters in the sport. So I have the Texas Longhorns at number 5, and I have Georgia at 6. I'm comfortable ranking Georgia anywhere between the 5 to 8 range. I don't know if I'd have them as high as the AP has them at number 3, but I do trust Georgia. I do trust the floor of the roster. I think it's a very high floor for Georgia, but the ceiling is yet to be determined. Obviously, they won a national championship 4 years ago, but Gunnar Stockton, what does he look like another year as the starter? I don't know about the wide receiver situation. I don't feel the best about that, but the model of consistency that Kirby Smart has established firmly should have Georgia in playoff contention once again. So I have Georgia at number 6, and then I have Miami at 7. I believe the 7 teams that I just listed are your consensus top 7 teams. Again, it's whatever order you want to put them. But Miami at 7, they do have to replace their tackles, and they do have some churn on that offensive line. But who else would you want developing your offensive line than none other than Mario Cristobal, who played offensive line at Miami and is an offensive lineman by trade, and that's his expertise. I'm willing to blindly trust that unit as long as Mario Cristobal is the head coach. And then defense, man, the jump they made in the first year under their defensive coordinator, Corey Heatherman, was just ridiculous. It was fantastic, and he's back for another year as their defensive coordinator. I know you have to replace Ruben Bain. I know you have to replace Akeem Mesidor, but the cupboard is not bare down in Coral Gables. They have some pieces. Now, it may not be Ruben Bain, it may not be Akeem Mesidor, but collectively as a unit, I think they'll be just fine. And not only that, but I feel they upgraded at quarterback. I think Darian Mintz is an upgrade from Carson Beck. So I have Miami at 7. Draw a line. Now we get to your second tier, because I believe the way that I have my poll set up, I believe there are 4 tiers in this top 25. We enter tier 2. Tier 2, I have Ole Miss at 8. Trinidad Chambliss, one of the most electrifying players in college football, just a complete gamer. I think he'll actually be better in year 2 than he was in year 1. So I have Ole Miss at 8. At number 9, the team they'll play week 3, the LSU Tigers. That team, at least on paper, I know games aren't playing on paper, but at least on paper, that roster is one of the more talented in the country, certainly in the top 10. And I believe Lane Kiffin, a firmly established tier 2 level coach in college football, they can prove something this year. They can prove something this year. So I have LSU at number 9. I have Texas A&M at 10. Marcel Reed thought was great down the stretch of the regular season last year. Obviously, things didn't end how they wanted to in that playoff game versus Miami, but I trust the defense under Mike Elko. I like Marcel Reed. Now he does have a new offensive coordinator. Colin Klein's no longer calling plays, as he's now the head coach at Kansas State, but he's going to have some weapons to throw to. And I trust the run game. I like the offensive line. So I have Texas A&M at 10. I have Oklahoma at 11. This is another one of those scenarios where who's your head coach? Brent Venables, a defensive coordinator by trade. I will trust Oklahoma on defense as long as Brent Venables is there. You have a fully healthy John Mateer, who before the thumb injury was the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. Isaiah Satania at wide receiver, just love that connection there. My question with Oklahoma is how effectively are they going to be able to run the football? That is one of the biggest question marks I have with Oklahoma, but I have them at 11. At number 12, I told you I would have USC higher, and I do. I have USC at number 12. I believe they will make the playoffs this year. It is playoff or bust for Lincoln Riley. We've talked about that on this show. Year 3 for Jaden Mayava. The line of scrimmage on both sides, offense and defense, finally looks Big Ten-esque. Looks like it's able to compete in a conference like the Big Ten. The defense looks to be trending up, and they have Gary Patterson as defensive coordinator. Not worried about the run game, not worried about the offensive line. They do have to replace, Jacoby Lane and Mekhi Lemon, but I do trust their wide receiver room. I've never really doubted the offense under Lincoln Riley. So I have USC at 12. At 13, this is where I have the first team from, outside of the SEC, Big Ten, ACC, and then Notre Dame's in there as an independent. First team from the Big 12. I have Texas Tech. I like the overall roster. Maybe even a little bit little better than I did last year. But everything that went down with Brendan Sorsby and them trying to upgrade at quarterback and the whole betting thing didn't work out for them. And now they turn to Will Hammond, who was actually on the team last year, was the backup to Baron Morton. He won a couple of games for him when Baron Morton went down with injury. So Will Hammond's a capable quarterback, but it may be a similar result to what happened to Texas Tech last year, where you're good enough to win the Big 12. You get to the college football playoff, but then when you get matched up with one of these other teams listed ahead of them, then you kind of get exposed a little bit. That's no indictment on Texas Tech, but they tried to upgrade at the quarterback situation. They just didn't see it coming. So I have Alabama, another one of these viewed as tier 2 teams in the SEC. I have them at 14. Very similar situation with Oklahoma, where they could not run the football last year. And I don't know how much worse the run game could be at a place like Alabama, but it needs to improve this year. And then you throw in the quarterback situation with who's going to start. Is it going to be Keelan Russell? Is it going to be Austin Mack? I think both are capable. Whoever they end up naming a starter, I think both of them are very capable at playing quarterback in the SEC. But I go throughout Alabama's roster, and I just don't feel like they upgraded a whole lot at the spots compared to where it was last year. Now, last year's team was good enough to make the college football playoff and win a game. This Alabama team is certainly capable of doing that. But if we're talking about anything higher, I just don't know. So I have Alabama at 14. Draw a line. Every team 8 through 14 that I just mentioned, that's tier 2 for me in this top 25. Now we move to tier 3. I have BYU at 15, another team from the Big 12. There's not much of a gap between Texas Tech, where they are at 13, to where BYU is at 15. I do believe Texas Tech is they're firmly in tier 1 with BYU. I believe BYU's in that tier 1. But Texas Tech is ahead of them for obvious reasons. But BYU basically returns everybody from last year outside of a couple players. And they're older. And I love Kalani Sitake. I love the formula that they have on BYU. They don't deviate from how they play, and it works for them. They went 11-1 in the regular season, ended up losing to the same team twice. But it wouldn't surprise me if BYU is able to win the Big 12 this year. I have BYU at 15. We're going to see a run of Big 10 teams here. I have Michigan at 16. I have Penn State at 17. And I have Washington at 18. Washington is the team that I look at, and I think they can muddy this thing up for the rest of the field. Because you look at Washington's schedule, and 5 of their first 6 games they get at home. But they have to go to USC. They have Iowa in there. They have Penn State. They have Indiana. And then they end the season at Oregon. Think about if Washington were to upset some of those teams, how that could muddy things up in the Big Ten. Washington, I look at, and out of this list of teams that I just named so far, that's the team that I circle that could really mess things up. Really mess things up for when it comes to playoff pictures, Big Ten races, and that sort of thing. Draw another line. That's tier 3, very short tier, only 4 teams. But then we get to the tier 4. And this is, we can debate order on these teams, but they deserved a spot in this preseason top 25. But the order is kind of not irrelevant, but jumbled. I have SMU at 19. Love Kevin Jennings at quarterback for him. Houston at 20. I talked about this on the very first episode we ever did on the show, that they're my dark horse in the Big 12. Really like Houston's overall roster. Definitely think that they can take a step better than they were last year. And last year, they got 10 wins. So I have Houston at 20. Utah's at 21. Losing Jason Beck as your offensive coordinator, huge blow. They do return their quarterback, Devin Dampier. They return their running back, Wayshawn Parker, but they have to replace a lot on that offensive side of the ball. Not a lot of returning starts on the offense. And defense, Morgan Scalley's their head coach now, who was their defensive coordinator last year, but now he's assuming head coaching duties. So he already has a lot on his plate now. I'm not just willing to assume that the defense is just going to stay where it was or even get better now that Morgan Scalley has all these different responsibilities going on. But Houston on paper as of right now, I'm fine having them at 21. I have Missouri at 22. One of the best running backs in college football is Ahmad Hardy. Austin Simmons is at quarterback, transfer from Ole Miss. Austin Simmons was good enough where Lane Kiffin was named him the starter at the beginning of last year over Trinidad Chambliss. Now, Trinidad Chambliss is better, but Lane Kiffin thought very highly of Austin Simmons, and I think that we should too. I have Iowa at 23. You know what you're going to get out of Iowa. The formula doesn't change. Run the ball, play good defense, not a lot of explosive plays, but just solid. I have Louisville at 24. I love what Jeff Brom is able to do with transfer portal quarterbacks. And this year it's Lincoln Kine-Holtz, a transfer from Ohio State, a great running back in Isaac Brown, great run game in general. Love the defense for Louisville. I have Louisville at 24, which, by the way, I'll see them in Nashville when they take on Ole Miss in the Music City kickoff. And then this is where I have Tennessee. I have Tennessee at 25. I thought 20 was a little too high for my liking, but I love the roster. It's just a matter of the discussion that we're all having. Who's going to start at quarterback? That's what it boils down to for Tennessee. But if you go and you look at the AP poll and you go and you look at the teams that are receiving votes, if you have an issue of Tennessee being in the top 25, my question to you is, well, where else would you put them? Because it's kind of interchangeable once you get past the 18 mark. I mean, yeah, a lot of these teams deserve to be ranked at least to start the season, but you can make the case for a lot of teams. It's really a jumbled mess once you get past that point.